Alrighty, welcome back to the Defying Gravity podcast with Zac.Goodman. Today we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A and also talk about some recent training and some things that we've added and some things that we've taken away. Um, but I want to open up the podcast with some questions I've gotten through X or Twitter. If you follow me on there, I'm usually pretty active. I post at least a couple times a day, and I answer my DMs at least a few times a day. So if you ever need to reach out or you have questions for me, that's a good place to find me. If not, Instagram is also a good place to find me, as I try to stay active on both of those. Um, so today I have some questions from X or Twitter. The first one was from X and it says, how would you structure a 2 times a week program using the training system that you use? So I've had a lot of questions about how would you set up like a 2 day or 3 day, because the reality of it is a lot of athletes don't have 4 days a week to train, which is fine because I have athletes who only train a few days a week as well. So it's not make or break. It's not that you can only use this system if you train 4 days a week. Again, you can adapt and adjust. That's the beauty of the scheme, is that you're getting every method and every speed and velocity addressed every session. So you're not just getting strength here and then missing speed here, or getting rep work here, not getting rep work here. Like you're getting speed, you're getting power, you're getting your strength, and you're getting your repeated effort every single session. So a couple things that I want to make sure that we know is, the first thing, it does depend on the athlete. And I know I hate when everyone says it depends, but to figure out what kind of setup you want to use depends on the training age of the athlete. The older or more trained they are, the more likely they are to not respond best to combo lifts. The stronger they are, the faster they are, the more likely they are to not respond best to combo lifts. Um, the younger they are, the weaker they are, the slower they are, the better off they're using combo lifts. So there's a couple ways to do this. Okay, the first one is you combo lift twice a week, meaning that we are going to do an upper main lift and a lower main lift, as well as some upper and lower accessory work. And you are going to typically jump twice a week. You could jump one day and sprint one day, or dumbbell jump both days, sprint one day, vertical jump one day. I've done that too. To me, I'm biased to the jumping. If you make athletes jump higher, they will always run faster. If you make athletes run faster, they don't always jump higher. So I'm very biased to just training the crap out of acceleration. So that's the way I would typically scheme it. If I had a young athlete who was maybe middle school age, freshman, sophomore, undertrained, hasn't been with me for a few years, those types of kids are going to be great with combo lifts. So how you structure it is, I always start with our dynamic work, regardless of combo, upper, lower, doesn't matter. Start with your jumps first, or if you're sprinting, jump and then sprint. And then with combo lifts, we always go upper main lift first, so bench press of some sort, whether it's a close grip or paused or regular, whatever. Then we'll go directly into our main lower lift, and then we'll do our accessory work after. So we'll do our sprint or jump, our sprint, or just jump, upper main lift, lower main lift, and then usually accessory work is typically low back, glutes, hamstrings. It's posterior chain. So in the lower body, low back, glutes, hamstrings, all that good stuff. And then for the upper body, typically like I like a chin up or a row or something like that. And then maybe some tricep work, or rear delts, things like that. Okay. That's typically the way I like to do it. I don't like to do an upper main lift and a lower main lift and also do supplemental lifts. That seems to be too taxing, especially because the frequency, you're still getting things twice a week. So typically that's the way I would split it. There's one way you could do, if you know your kids are coming in twice a week, you could combo one day and then do all your upper accessories one day, and the second day you combo and then do all your lower accessories. I've done that too. That also works. It depends on the type of athlete you have. Some kids mentally, they want to still have that upper lower feeling, but still get their main lifts in both days. Some kids just cannot tolerate that, and they need to have, it again all put together. You need to know your kids and know what your athletes need, and also know just what are they going to be most consistent with. 'Cause at the end of the day, the kids have to enjoy training. If they hate the full body, multiple, lower accessories and upper accessories together, then you're gonna have to split them. I find that most kids like having an upper day and a lower day. That seems to be what most people like to do. It gives them just organization. It makes sense on paper, and they're not absolutely cooked after every session. So That's how I would do the combo lift. Second way you could do this, you just do an upper lower split. You don't change anything the way you already do it. Again, you prioritize jumping. Again, what I would do if I did an upper lower split, I would do one day where I do my loaded jumps, unloaded jumps, squat, repeated effort work for lower day. Upper day, I would do loaded jumps, sprints, upper main lift, upper accessories. That's the way I would do an upper lower if I had kids twice a week. Okay. If you have kids 3 times a week, because this came up too, upper lower combo tends to work best. Push your combo at typically, I put it on a Friday because they have the weekend to repair, recover, relax. If that's not feasible, put your combo at the beginning of the week. If they don't play anything during the week, some kids play most of their sports on the weekend and are off quite a bit during the week. Flip it, whatever schedule works best. That's the way I like to split it. Again, the ideal is that 4 days a week, upper, lower, everything's balanced. Everything is frequent exposure, very small, dosed correctly, not large, long sessions, split evenly. That's the ideal. But if you have to make adjustments, that's how I would do it. Okay. Good question. Thank you for asking that. Secondly, next question I have off of Twitter says, do you change anything for female athletes? The question is no, or the answer is no. I do not change anything for female athletes. Female athletes respond to the same principles of biomechanics and physics and biology. Okay, just because they are female athletes, their bodies still adapt to the same stimulus of jumping and sprinting. They still adapt to the same stimulus of brief maximal tension. They still adapt to the same stimulus. Their tissue still adapts to the same sort of strain as males do. Okay, biggest difference I see is this. One, female athletes have a hard time discharging high threshold motor units, meaning they can't grind the same way that males can. Okay. Couple reasons. Mentally, most females just don't have that like second gear quite yet if they haven't trained before. Some girls do, and some girls are awesome, but most females you'll see do not tap into high threshold motor units. They don't strain or grind at those very low speeds. They also tend to respond better to those higher rep ranges of brief maximal tension. So 4 to 6 reps tends to work really well for them. But again, they adapt the same way. I've never had a problem getting female athletes stronger. The female athletes that I have that are consistent are extremely strong. I have a freshman girl right now that's a 330-pound squatter, freshman girl in high school. I have an 8th-grade girl who just squatted 250 today. Again, 8th-grade girl. Both play volleyball. One of them's a wrestler. The other one does basketball too, track. Okay. I have some female basketball players who, are squatting over 200 pounds. They jump well, they sprint well. Again, the body adapts. Okay. The training is systematic. The training works doesn't matter, works for everybody. Okay. The only difference is they're weaker, they're slower, they're less explosive. They thrive on a little bit more volume, a little bit more frequency. But again, they have really high demands too. They're playing sports, they're running a shit, especially female athletes. They run a shit ton at practices. Their coaches tend to work them really, really hard. And this goes across all sports. This is not just volleyball or basketball, whatever. Female athletes tend to have coaches that love volume. So again, typically the training really stays the same and we get great results with the female athletes too. So no, you don't have to change anything. Okay. Thirdly, main lift rotations. I had somebody ask me on Twitter, what are your main lift rotations? Okay. So I keep them a small library. I don't like having a really large library of exercises because the reality of it is if you're rotating too much crazy stuff all the time, the kids don't adapt, the kids don't get stronger, and then you end up having to teach hundreds of kids, every few weeks something brand new. So again, it just kind of kills the efficiency and kills the potency of the training. Hence why we use brief maximal tension as an undulating wave because we are able to overcome accommodation without having to change the exercise, which is ideal for younger athletes. So for the bench press, we really keep it pretty simple. We do a lot of regular bench press, a lot of close grip bench press, and a lot of pause bench press. Supplemental work, we get a little crazy. We get, outside the box a little bit, board pressing, Larson pressing, incline benching, things like that. But the main lift is typically regular bench, close grip bench, pause, close grip. That's typically what we stick with, okay? Because it allows us to use a lot of load across a large range of motion, very stable, very consistent, very logistically sound in our setup and our program, and we test it all the time. Okay, supplemental and accessories, that's when we get a little bit outside the box, but main lifts, that's what we use. Main lift rotation for lower body for the squats. We will box squat with a straight bar, safety bar box squat, heel elevated straight bar squat, heel elevated safety bar squat. And that's really about it. We've gotten away from front squatting pretty much completely. Haven't front squatted in over, I don't know, 2 years now. Our numbers have been better since we've gotten rid of front squatting. Again, accessory wise, we'll still use things like goblet squats and Kozak squats, split squats, all that good stuff. But our main lifts, that's really what it consists of. Deadlifts are always kind of a supplemental movement for us. We don't necessarily prioritize them first. They always come after we squat, but right after we squat, we hinge. RDLs, rack pulls, stiff legs, deficit deads, sumo deadlifts, conventional deadlifts, good mornings. Those are all things that are rotational time. We rotate the hinges more frequently than we do our squats. Okay. So hopefully that gives you some information on how to rotate. Again, keep it simple, keep it effective, keep it consistent. Waive the loads and the rep schemes for younger athletes versus just waiving the exercises all the time. You want to save that, and that's more effective as they become more trained when they need a change in those pressures. Okay. They don't need consistent change every week or every couple weeks when they're very young because they're still just figuring out how to lift weights and figure out how to apply force into an external load. Okay. Fourth question I had dynamic effort without bands and chains. What percentages? Okay. Excuse me. When it comes to dynamic effort, again, we don't do any speed squatting or really speed pulls necessarily. We used to do some speed pulls. We don't really do speed pulls anymore. Um, all of our dynamic effort work comes from sprinting, jumping. We have a ShredMill now, so we get a resist. We get loaded sprinting and unloaded sprinting. We get loaded jumping and unloaded jumping. We jump with vertical jumps. We do broad jumps. We do plyo swings against different tensions at different velocities, different loads. Dumbbell jumps are waived. So that's typically how we jump. And then we've been doing a lot of stuff with like plyos, like hurdle hops, the RSI tests, the pogo jumps. We do a lot of stuff like that too. So we don't do any speed squats. We squat for absolute strength development, which means we're always squatting heavy. Okay, that's where the brief maximal tension method comes in. So that would be my answer to dynamic effort without bands and chains. I'm assuming you're talking about box squatting. Again, I don't do that with my athletes. Some coaches do that, and they have good athletes, and it works for them. But what I will say is there is not a better system at getting young athletes stronger faster than the way that I am doing it in my setup. Like I've tried, I've done dynamic effort squat waves, I've done the max effort, I've tried to do brief max potential with the dynamic effort, split it. The best way to do it is to do dynamic effort every single day via loaded jumps, sprinting, things like that. Then brief maximal tension, main lifts, big barbell lifts, and then accessories that complement that training that and fix structural weakness. Okay. So that's what I would say. If you're going to use percentages and you want a speed box squat and that sort of deal, and you don't have bands and chains, the typical rule of thumb is like 75 to 80, 85 and a 3-week pendulum wave. Again, for me, I just skip all that and we just go right to brief maximal tension. And that's what I would suggest for everybody. I've never seen somebody swap from doing the traditional West Side setup with young athletes to what I'm doing and them get worse results. Every single time, 100% of the time, they get better results because the way we're doing it is the way that initially Louis was doing it with those younger lifters. Louis wasn't doing speed box squats with brand new guys and heavy max effort squats. Like they were doing heavy work all the time, and then they got to a point where they got strong enough where they had to go faster. Okay, they had to kind of unload on a day to get ready for the next max effort day. Okay, and then later in Louis' career, when he had weaker guys, what did he end up doing? He turned dynamic effort into brief max tension. He upped the percentages. He went to 5x5s, and he said, "We need to get bigger. We need to get stronger. We need more heavy work because we don't have big, strong guys like we used to." Okay, so you can't skip that part. Okay, so that'd be kind of my suggestion on that. Last question I have here today, dumbbell jumps. How often are PRs? Variability between sessions. Okay, so with dumbbell jumps, how often are PRs? To be honest with you, we get a PR in dumbbell jumps almost every single day. Like dumbbell jumps are so consistent, so good. We do 4 dumbbell jumps pretty much every single time, and we hit PRs pretty much every single time with every kid. Okay. The only way you're not hitting dumbbell jump PRs is if A, like you're not applying yourself at all into the strength work. B, you're not coming to sessions. C, you're not jumping with the right loads. Like if you are consistent with your strength work, you show up to sessions, you follow and do what I tell you to do. Every single one of our kids, 100% of the time, they get dumbbell jump PRs every day, if not every week. We have no problems with moving dumbbell jump PRs. Okay. The dumbbell jumps, very consistent, very predictable, very easy to increase. Okay. If you're using the setup that I'm using, okay, that is the caveat. I don't know what it looks like for other programs. I know other programs struggle getting jumps to go up, hence why they reach out to people like me that are using this kind of setup because they struggle getting the jumps to go up or sprint speeds to go down. In my setup, we've never had any problems with doing that. Variability between sessions. The dumbbell jumps are very consistent because they slow you down. The load slows you down. The slower the movement, the more consistent it is because the less variability it is from fatigue. So the higher speed movement, the more sensitive it is to fatigue. So if you sleep bad at night, if you eat shitty food, if you're not taking care of your stress, really, really high speed movements, sprinting, vertical jumps, broad jumps, things like that are more variable versus something like a loaded jump or even like the ShredMill, a loaded sprint, less variable because it's slower. The weight slows you down. Okay. It's kind of like squatting and benching and deadlifting. You can eat like shit and sleep like shit for days on end and still hit PRs on your main lifts for quite a while. Really hard to do that if you're sprinting. Okay. So the body's just the nervous system is just so much more sensitive to fatigue with those high velocities. Okay. So dumbbell jumps should be consistent. Your variability between your dumbbell jumps and your vertical jumps, I have this all the time too. Dumbbell jump goes up for a few weeks, vertical jump stays the same. Okay. What tends to happen is this when you run a 3 week pendulum wave and you're doing your dumbbell jumps, you're going to have kids who respond better to one of those 3 weights. Okay. Whether it's the lightest weight, the middle weight, or the heaviest weight, kids are going to consistently respond best to one of those weights that they're jumping with. Okay. The problem is you can't stay at that weight every single week or you run into the law of accommodation, hence why you have to waive the weights. Okay. So a good example is this. I have athletes who will consistently PR on week 1 of every dumbbell pendulum wave, meaning they dumbbell jump a PR, they vertical jump PR in the same session like clockwork. Okay. This is because it's not because the lighter weight's better for them, it's because the heavier weight is better for them because they are adapting from the previous week using the heaviest dumbbells. So let me give you an example of a kid that does this every freaking week and he's awesome and he listens to everything I tell him to do and he's a great kid. And this, I was just explaining to him this today. Okay. He says, Goodman, why do I always PR whenever I have the lightest dumbbells? Is it because it makes me tight? The heavier dumbbells make me tighter. Okay. And I said, the reason that you PR on your lighter weeks versus your heavy weeks is because your body's adapted previously from those heavy weeks. So think about it. He goes 30, 35, 40, then he PRs on 30. It's because he went through an entire cycle. He got to his heaviest weights. 40s induced the greatest adaptation to him because it slowed him down to the greatest extent. But he's getting really close. He's matching his 40s with his 30s. So his body's having big super compensation the next week. Therefore, he's hitting a PR on those lighter weeks because, yes, he is getting more fatigue from those heavier loads. But at the same time, his body's adapting to the fatigue from the stress. So he's hitting PRs on week 1 of the wave because week 3 is so effective for him. Okay. Typically, athletes are going to PR on week 1 or week 3. Usually, athletes don't adapt or respond as frequently, as consistently on week 2. If they're young, if they're untrained, doesn't matter. They will respond in any week. There's no consistency. The more trained they get, the more you start to see patterns. Typically, what I see in my training is week 1 or week 3, kids tend to adapt best. Okay. Kids typically don't adapt best on week. They typically don't PR on week 2. They typically PR from the heaviest load, or they again will come back from and they'll PR from that other load. Okay. So that's typically what I see. Okay. Again, there's variability all the time. There's some kids, they just dumbbell jumps, move. It takes them 2 cycles for their vertical jump to jump up 1.5 inches. Okay. Sometimes you just have to get lucky and have a good jump day. That's what I tell kids all the time. You just got to have a good jump day. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason as to why the vertical jump PRs in one day and doesn't the other. I had 2 kids today. One kid's been at like 33, 34. He hit a 35.8 today. And again, doesn't make any sense why today was just the day his body decided to do it. Decided he wanted to do it. I had a kid who was stuck in the 32s and 31s for a minute and then boom, jumped to 34 like 2 days ago. Okay, so it just happens. and you have to ride the waves and you have to just be consistent. And that's what I would tell people. Okay. If you're not seeing vertical jumps move at all for like months on end, your training is messed up. Like there's something going on where you're either you're not dumbbell jumping correctly. B, you're not getting enough jumps. Okay. C, you're not getting strong enough, fast enough. Okay. Your relative strength levels are not moving at the speed they need to be moving at. Or C, you have glaring weaknesses in the accessory work and you need to address that. Okay. Training is not a guessing game. It is very much an equation, and you just got to figure out how to tweak certain things to work for your kids. Okay. So that's what I would say when it comes to those dumbbell jumps and how often PRs are happening. Okay. So last thing I want to talk about real quick, okay, ShredMill training. Okay. Wanted to talk about the ShredMill. I know people have been asking about it. I like the ShredMill a lot. We've been using it every week. We use it twice a week for a while, then we moved it to once a week because now we have a longer turf strip with a new weight room. So we're running flies with a longer turf strip. So the way I originally used it, I like it for acceleration. I don't use any top end speed stuff with it. In my opinion, I'd rather just have my kids run on a laser for top end than like the whole point of the ShredMill is the resistance to me. That's the reason I got it. To me, the ShredMill is the equivalent to the dumbbell jumps in that I can load them very precisely, very consistently, very measurably, and wave it week to week to week. Okay. So initially, I know Tony and Matt, they used to always suggest like doing 80% of your work at gear or resistance six. Okay. And doing a lot of just acceleration work. That's like most of their training is just like resistance six, gear two type work. Okay. So what I've been doing is I started there. Okay. I did 5, 6, 7. So I would wave it. It would be like 20 yards what we were running. We'd go 20 yards at 5, at 6, at 7, come back, break a PR. Okay. What I found is resistance 7 was too heavy for the kids. It just like was absolutely killing them to the point where it just didn't make a lot of sense. Like, the weight was just too heavy. It's kind of like trying to dumbbell jump with like 50s and 60s. It's just too heavy for those kids. Okay. So we pulled it back. What we went to then was okay, let me stay at resistance 6 for the 3 weeks and let me go 10, 15, 20 and just wave the yardage and see how that works. And so we did that and we set PRs on that, and that was good. And it worked. Um, and I should mention, we're only really doing 2 to 3 sprints in the ShredMill a day. It's not very much. It's 2 to 3 all out max effort, get your miles per hour, move on to your benching. It's not that long. It doesn't take that much time. And we can cycle kids through the ShredMill pretty quick because I'll have some kids start benching, some kids start in the ShredMill, and then we just rotate. Okay. It doesn't take very much time. Kids are able to get it done. If a kid like just continues to run faster, I'll let them just run a couple more. Or so let's say, like I had a kid who he ran 10.4 miles an hour. His PR was 10.4. He's a middle school kid on resistance 6, and he ran for 20 yards. He got to 10.4, and he got that last wave. He ran 10.4 on his first set, 10.4 on his second set because he didn't take enough rest. I looked at his numbers. He's like, I keep tying it. What am I doing? I'm like, well, how long did you rest? Oh, I rested like a minute or so. I'm like, okay, we got to rest like 2 or 3 or 4. He takes his time, runs another one, 10.5. And I said, I still think you got more. We just moved his hands a little bit. I got him a little bit lower on it. Boom, 10.8, boom, 11. So we ended up running like 5 total reps, right? So if a kid's just like in that situation, just have them keep running. Again, if it means that we miss an accessory, if we're condensing in this situation, we were after school, so we have more time. Even if in a class, I'm always going to prioritize the dynamic work and the brief maximal tension work. Accessories, they're not my main concern, hence why they're at the end of my workout. I want to get them done, and most kids can get them done, but I'm willing to sacrifice an accessory on a day if we can hit a jump or a sprint PR. That's just my preference. That's what I prefer, and that's what we do. Okay. So what we're doing now, after I've kind of figured some things out, and I was able to kind of retest on our flies and some of our dashes to see what's affecting it the most, I figured out 20 yards is the optimum, or at least right now for our kids. 20 yards is the best. We've done 10s, we've done 15s. 20s is like perfect because you get about 5 seconds of really, really good work. Okay, with load. So you get about 5 seconds of really, really good work. Secondly, with those 20s, okay, with the resistance, we go 4, 5, and 6. So instead of going 5, 6, 7, we go 4, 5, and 6. 6 is the heaviest, and that's what typically Matt and Tony say they spend most of their resistance on. But who does Matt and Tony work with? NFL athletes who are already pretty strong, okay, and already pretty heavy. I work with younger athletes who are not as big and not as strong quite yet, and not as elastic. So I lowered the percentages a bit. We're going 4, 5, and 6. 6 is our higher end. And sprint PR has been really good. We're still progressing on the ShredMill. We're still progressing on our regular sprints. What I found is you can run that ShredMill up really fast if you do it twice a week. So if you run just the ShredMill and don't do any additional sprinting, you can run up the ShredMill about a mile an hour almost every 3 weeks. So you can add a mile an hour to a kid's 20 in every 3 weeks. If you do it once a week and then fly the other day of the week, it's a little bit slower. But I also think there's a lot of value in touching those little bit faster speeds that one day a week. Okay. Our fly times haven't slowed down, and really we've had a lot of emphasis on weight gain this last like 3 or 4 months. We are like pressing on just adding a lot of weight to us. And we're still hitting jump PRs, and Hill is still hitting sprint PRs while kids are gaining upwards of 10 plus pounds in the last month and a half, 2 months. So like, we're gaining rapid weight, but we're still getting a little bit faster, getting a little bit, jumping a little bit higher. So things are good, and I don't want to change that quite yet. So that's what we're running right now. Again, I haven't had the ShredMill as long as I've had other things, so it's not like I've perfected it. But what I would say is a couple things. A, lower the weights. If you have a ShredMill, lower them a little bit, wave them, make them work in the system you're already doing. Secondly, I like a lot of 20s on that. I love that acceleration phase that the ShredMill offers. I think it's fantastic. So that's what we're doing right now. If you have questions on kind of what else, how else we're kind of scheming that up, let me know. But again, I keep it very simple, and I keep it again in the system so it's predictable and understandable for the kids. And again, we're just continuing to tweak one or two variables, right? What we're running right now is kind of what our base is. I've been just tweaking a variable or two every single wave and just trying to mess around a little bit with what's going on. I haven't perfected it yet, but again, that's kind of where we're at. Okay. So that's all I have for the podcast today. Thank you so much for listening. If you have more questions or you have topics that you want me to discuss or talk about, let me know on Twitter, X, or Instagram, or however else you want to contact. If you have my number, shoot me a text. The biggest thing for me is, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to hear? So I'm happy to supply that information for you. Okay. But that is me signing off. Peace.